Thank you very much, Prime Minister Solberg. This next session is about financial innovation for blue and green investment. Today, you'll notice a good deal of emphasis on the blue economy. Our oceans regulate the global climate. They mediate temperature and drive the weather, determining rainfall, droughts, and floods. They're also the world's largest store of carbon. An estimated 83% of the global carbon cycle is circulated through marine waters. The interaction between these two natural forces is altering, and the exchange is intensifying. In the last 200 years, the oceans have absorbed a third of the CO2 produced by human activities and 90% of the extra heat trapped by the rising concentration of greenhouse gases. As the climate responds to decades of increasing carbon emissions, the store of energy and heat from the atmosphere builds up in the ocean. If we reach a tipping point, we'll likely see more extreme weather events, changing ocean currents, rising sea levels and temperatures, and melting of sea ice and ice sheets, all of which aggravate the negative impacts of overfishing, illegal fishing, pollution, and habitat degradation. The global financial system is inextricably linked to the ocean. A recent report from the London School of Economics declared that finance is a critical part of responding to today's environmental threats. Integrating the ocean into the global financial architecture is long overdue. The global ocean economy is valued at around $1.5 trillion, and over 80% of the world's trade is transported by sea. There are numerous financing opportunities in marine industries such as shipping, energy, tourism, and seafood. Fishing, directly and indirectly, employs 350 million people. As well as the commercial element, the ocean is the largest ecosystem on Earth and central to the survival of nature and humankind. In order that the oceans can survive and thrive, the United Nations General Assembly has proclaimed 2021 to 2030 as the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, the Ocean Decade. Peter Thomson, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for the Ocean, described the situation thus: "We've got 10 years where we're really mobilizing all around the world, academic institutions and businesses and governments, all getting behind this ocean decade, so that we'll have the science that we need for the ocean we want by the time we get to 2030. So to tell us more, our first keynote speaker of the day, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for the Ocean, Peter Thomson.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, greetings to everyone present with us today, and please take it as given that all courtesies are observed. I'll begin my remarks by placing them within the context of the times in which we live. In his State of the Planet address delivered at Columbia University in New York last December, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said humanity is waging a suicidal war upon nature. He reported that 1 million species are at risk of extinction and that ecosystems are disappearing before our eyes. He said the ocean is being overfished, is increasingly choking with plastic waste, and that due to anthropogenic GHG emissions, coral reefs are bleaching and dying. Perhaps because I come from an island that is ringed by a mighty coral reef, I highlight humanity's predicament by linking it to the future of coral. The IPCC's special report on the impacts of global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels states with high confidence that 70 to 90% of tropical coral reefs will be lost when we arrive at global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Coral reefs are home to some 20 to 30% of marine life. They're bunkers of marine biodiversity. And it's an understatement to say their loss will have major consequences for the health of the ocean. At this point, please remember, we cannot have a healthy planet without a healthy ocean. Our predicament is that we're not heading to a destination of 1.5 degrees. The World Meteorological Organization unequivocally reports that the world is currently on track for warming of over 3 degrees by the end of the 21st century. Over 3 degrees and we will be in an economically ruinous state. Agriculture and fisheries will fail. Mass human migration will become a matter of life and death. The insurance industry will no longer function as coastal cities become inundated by rising sea levels. Over 3 degrees by the end of this century is a time frame within the lives of my granddaughters. I, for one, refuse that future. If you're with me in that refusal, ladies and gentlemen, before it's too late and that hour is near, we must make peace with nature. In short, this is the time to be among the peacemakers or condemn our children and those who come after them to suffer the bitter consequences. From the vantage of the peacemakers' table, it is clear that global warming must not be allowed to exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius. The common good requires that countries and corporations, cities and private sector, communities and individuals all become net zero carbon by 2050. The ocean will give us our food, new forms of nourishment, not just finned fish, but increasingly seaweeds and shellfish produced by sustainable non-fed aquaculture. If we treat the ocean right, it'll give us our medicines in the post-antibiotic age. And as we bid goodbye to the gray age of burning fossil fuels, in its place, the ocean will provide a bright blue-green future of clean energy from offshore wind farms and other marine renewable energy resources. Seated at the peace table, we see that the ocean is not a dumping ground or just a natural resource to be subjugated and exploited. It is, in fact, our greatest ally, providing us with the viable solutions we require for sustainable recovery and enduring resilience, while at the same time driving the restoration and protection of its own health. The work of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, led by 14 serving heads of government, demonstrates that the ocean is central to reducing global greenhouse gas emissions. Notably, the panel's expert researchers found that the ocean-based climate action can play a much bigger role in shrinking the world's carbon footprint than was previously thought. In fact, through such measures as the greening of shipping, offshore renewable energy, and sustainable aquaculture, the ocean could deliver up to 1/5 of the annual greenhouse gas emission cuts needed in 2050 to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. Ocean finance can play a game-changing role in delivering these cuts, and in the process, achieve the promise of a sustainable blue economy. However, current investments fall well below what is needed to make this transition, with less than 1% of the total value of the ocean's economy invested in sustainable projects to date. Of the public and private sector investments already committed, a significant portion are targeted at larger scale economic activities that are often unsustainable and counter to the delivery of Sustainable Development Goal 14. The high-level panel has called for the sustainable finance gap to be closed through improved sustainable blue economy policies and incentives. It calls for tools and approaches to be designed and established, knowledge and innovations to be proactively shared, and for capacities to be built to address environmental, social, and economic risk. In summary, new forms of finance must be mobilized, and mainstream finance needs to redirect towards an ocean economy that empowers local people and supports responsible business and long-term societal goals. Obviously, there are hurdles to clear, and these will be discussed today. The high-level panel recognized that many blue projects lack the appropriate deal size and risk ratios to match capital, making scaling and replication more complex than in familiar terrestrial sectors. Secondly, they identified a lack of familiarity with ocean-based project development and financing, both by business and the finance sectors. And thirdly, they noted the existence of capacity gaps, particularly in developing countries, on how to access sustainable ocean finance. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you agree, these are not insurmountable hurdles, and I'm sure there are many amongst you here who are eminently capable of jumping them. Given the context of our times, as set out in my opening remarks today, it is clear that we've arrived at a point whereby our future well-being demands that the sustainable blue economy be fully integrated into the global financial architecture. I therefore commend Euronext for taking up this challenge. The private and public sectors, in tandem, must remove existing barriers and open the pipeline to investment in the sustainable blue economy. This is going to entail the creation of an inclusive, enabling environment and proactive strengthening and scaling up of investable projects. It will also require immediate exploration of new financing mechanisms and tools. And I leave that to your deliberations today, for example, on how ESG blue bonds can best be developed. Before exponentially opening the pipeline, precaution and logic demand the adoption of clear principles to redirect mainstream finance in the desired manner. The good news is that we have already enshrined the Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles hosted at the UN-convened Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Initiative. And I point you in the direction of UNEP's Finance Initiative for full information about them. UNEP FI has been working with financial institutions in the production of the first practical toolkit to augment finance for the sustainable blue economy across 5 key sectors. The result is the publication of Turning the Tide, How to Finance a Sustainable Ocean Recovery. The practical guidance for financial institutions found in Turning the Tide provides breakdowns of what activities to seek out as best practices, which client activities to challenge, and which activities to avoid financing completely due to their damaging nature. Ensuring resilience and long-term stability for marine industries means that financial players reduce risks of default and claims, helping to bring their financial activities long-term viability and profitability. The 5 key ocean sectors covered by Turning the Tide are shipping, ports, coastal and marine tourism, seafood, and marine renewable energy. Others will address you today on the subject of the Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles, but allow me at the very least to ask that you familiarize yourselves with them. To illustrate their great worth to us, I choose this extract from their charter. We, the organizations that have agreed to adopt these principles, believe that delivering on them will contribute to the conservation and sustainable use of the ocean and to de-risking investment in the sustainable blue economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand in solidarity with the many who have decided to adopt the Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles, and I urge those who are still looking on from the dockside to get on board. The ship you will board when you adopt the Sustainable Blue Finance Principles is part of the biggest fleet ever assembled to protect, understand, and respect the ocean. There are now so many ships in this fleet, it would take me days to list them all. Some are small craft run by local communities, while others are giant vessels crewed and captained by multilateral organizations like the United Nations. All of them fly the SDG 14 flag, signifying our universal commitment to conserve and sustainably use the ocean's resources. One of those giant vessels is the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, specifically designed by the United Nations to provide us the science we need for the ocean we want. The decade has now been launched, and as a result, over the next 10 years, we expect to experience an enormous surge in knowledge about the ocean's properties. This knowledge will be vital to SDG 14 success, and through applying it around the world to sustainable ocean planning, it'll give us an immense boost to the sustainable blue economy. To generate the science we need for the ocean we want, we must leverage our collective resources, including expertise and funding. There is no doubt that meeting the high ambitions of the UN Ocean Decade will require significant increases in funding for ocean science. New sources of funding are needed, including emerging finance models such as blue bonds or ocean business impact investments and innovative in-kind contributions. The private sector has a lead role to play in the Ocean Decade as an ocean steward and advocate. The private sector can be the prime driver of technological innovation to enhance ocean science and scale up solutions. It'll be the employer of the next generation of ocean science professionals and can be the leader for innovative private and public partnerships and serve as the main generator and user of science-based ocean knowledge. Science industry collaboration will increase access to scientific knowledge, in the process contributing to reducing business risks, creating new commercial opportunities, stimulating the innovation ecosystem, and accelerating technology transfer. If all or any of these opportunities excite you, I encourage you to explore membership of the Ocean Decade Alliance, which is the UN's key mechanism for resource mobilization during the Ocean Decade. In urging you to do so, I note that the Ocean Decade Alliance is going to act as a matchmaker between resource providers and proponents of Ocean Decade actions. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll conclude with 2 quick points. Firstly, many of you are rightly focusing on the UFCCC COP26 in Glasgow this November. From the Sustainable Blue Economy's point of view, COP26 is the best opportunity for the world to move the climate finance needle decisively in the direction of strengthening the ocean's contribution to climate change mitigation. The basic fact is that transformative scaling up of public and private financing of ocean-based sustainable economic activities will accelerate our advance to a net zero carbon world by 2050. Secondly, a short word on partnerships. I urge you all to think about how your entry into the sustainable blue economy can be strengthened by partnership. Everything is connected. Thus, partnerships are a natural way for sustainable development to progress. The private sector has many options in this regard. Think just of the knowledge available from academia and science, the energy and commitment from youth and non-governmental organizations, the financial resources and motivation of philanthropies, or the broad reach and convening power of multilateral organizations. For the financial world, greater consideration of partnerships is a timely move, given that we are about a year away from the UN conference in Lisbon. As I'm sure you know, the theme of the conference points us in the direction of scaling up ocean action based on science and innovation, with a focus on stock-taking, solutions, and partnerships. With these thoughts, I end my remarks, looking forward to the panel's discussions and thanking everyone for your kind attention.